Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 1st Planning and Zoning meeting. If we could please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, good evening. If I could have roll call from my left, please.
John Grant.
Anthony Sutton.
Carl S. Moore.
Tom Panzella.
Jim Quish.
And I'm Chairman Scott Marlowe, and we're joined by David Solkis and Meg Green. First item of business is new business is item C, 13 Fern Street. Zone 7.5, recertification of a subdivision lot approved by Planning and Zoning Board on August 11th of 1959. Angelo Lisi, 296 LLC is the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton, and my office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And I'm before you tonight with an application for recertification of a lot that was approved by this board back in 1959. I'm going to give you a little bit of background history. I assume that staff has brought the old file here tonight, so if there's any reference that you need to make to some of the documents that I'm going to be referencing. But to make a long story short, back in 1959, when my father was the city attorney of this town, there was an application that was brought before the Planning and Zoning Board for a 3-lot subdivision of the property located at 13 Fern Street. And my clients, Greg Field and Angelo Lisi, 296 LLC, are contract purchasers of the property that is the remaining portion of that 3-lot subdivision. And the map that's been submitted to you with this application delineates the lot that we are looking to have certified from that approval. The long story short here is that back in 1959, the Planning and Zoning Board approved the 3-lot subdivision. There was a transfer of the lower portion of the property, which is now known as 155 Harrison Avenue. I do have a copy of the deed, and I supplied David with a copy of the deed that was recorded in volume 492, page 134 of our land records. But that was the first lot that was sold off from this subdivision. The remaining portion of the property is the property that my client is now purchasing. And in terms of doing a title search, when we went to perform the title search, my title searcher, John Dockendorf of Milford Land Title, discovered that the original subdivision map was not recorded on the land records. There is a copy of that map that's in your file, but the document wasn't recorded on the Milford land records. And to make matters worse, there was actually then a transfer of a lot from that subdivision that was recorded, as I referenced. But in fact, the original subdivision map wasn't filed. So in discussions with David, and David, I'm sure will chime in on this, he had discussions with the city attorney, and the decision was made to bring this application to you tonight with the survey that our surveyor, Paul Stovall, has prepared, showing the remaining portion that is to be split off, and a new single-family house will be constructed on that lot. The lot meets all of our current zoning regulations, as well as the zoning regulations in effect in 1959. The property is located in zone classification R75. The lot is some 8,500 square feet, so it exceeds by some 15% the square footage required for a building lot in that zone. And as Mr. Stovall has set forth on the survey that we submitted to you tonight, all building setbacks can be met. So this application, in sum and substance, is to seek a recertification of the 1959 subdivision, and for a Mylar map to be prepared and to have either David or Scott sign, and we can record it on the land records. So now there is a legal verification that this lot, in fact, was approved back at that time. I have nothing else further to add if the board has any questions, and as I said, I think David has some comments as well.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch. Mr. Sulkus.
I'll answer any questions. He really summarized it quite well. But the only thing I'll add is, just for your own information, that when this board approves a subdivision, it doesn't become legal until it's actually filed on the land records, and that's done through Mylar. And what happened in this case was the board approved this, and the applicant never filed the Mylar, and that's what has gotten us here today.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Mr. Quish.
To David, why then are we not just starting from scratch and saying, because it was never legal, just start a new subdivision?
Because it's already been subdivided. That's the problem. I mean, they already sold off a parcel from it.
Right.
And 155, let me get it here. What they did, what you're supposed to do when you get a subdivision approved is file a Mylar and then file your bond, do all of those things, and then you can sell the parcels. These people didn't do that. They just went and sold the parcels. So everything has been done. So now we're just left with, they built 13 Fern Street. They built 155 Harrison Avenue. And now 13 Fern Street, which is double wide. If you just look at it, you go, wow, that's just an extra wide lot. Well, actually, they built that house knowing that the side yard is actually an approved parcel. Had they filed the map, we wouldn't be here.
So just how do they sell the other two lots if they weren't filed properly?
They just did.
They just did.
They just did.
I'll tell you that today, the city clerk looks for our stamp before anyone files any map of this type. So in 1959, I don't think the city clerk was as diligent.
Are there other questions? Mr. Moore.
Are there any penalties that should be assessed for them not filing at the appropriate time frame?
There's no provision in state statute to do that, and we're talking about different property owners since 1959. The original property owner was Jenny Rosinski.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Attorney Lynch, did I hear you say this was going to be a lot for a single family, where a single family house is to be constructed?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion from the board. Yes, Attorney Sutton.
I would move to approve the application for recertification as presented.
I'll second.
Are there any questions on the motion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is a public hearing. Item D, 100 Viscount Drive is Zone WDD. Petition of a MSL Group, Inc. for an amendment to special permit and site plan review for a revised landscape plan on map 16, block 156, parcel 1, of which Milford Redevelopment and Housing Partnership is the owner. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with the... Oh, do you want a picture? Sure. I got other extras. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street here in Milford. And I'm here tonight on behalf of MSL Group, Inc. We have submitted 3 applications, an amendment to our special permit, site plan application, coastal site plan application. These applications all pertain to the property located at 100 Viscount Drive at the corner of Monroe Street. It's owned by Milford Redevelopment and Housing Partnership, and it consists of 6.7 acres and is located in the Waterfront Design District. I have submitted for the record photos of the placards that have been posted since July 13th on Monroe Street, Viscount Drive, and East Broadway. My client, MSL, is a developer of renewable energy projects from Maine to Maryland, and they happen to be headquartered here in Milford on Plains Road. They partner with commercial, industrial, and manufacturing businesses, as well as religious institutions and multifamily residential owners to lower electricity costs for the owners as well as tenants through alternative energy sources. That's the case here when the city's housing authority and its tenants receiving significantly lower electricity rates as part of their agreement with MSL, and you'll be hearing from counsel for the housing authority in a few minutes to detail the very substantial savings that the housing authority will reap as a result of this arrangement. In September of last year, MSL received zoning, building, and electrical permits for the installation of the ground-mounted solar arrays of the property, and those panels have been installed in the northeast corner of the property, and I submitted for the record copies of the zoning, building, and electrical permits. The arrays are very hard to see from the east as a result of from the north and the east as a result of the property's topography, because from the curve of the corner of Monroe and Viscount down to where the lowest portion of the property is, it drops by approximately 14 feet. So the photographs that I've handed out to you, the first one is looking south from Maplewood toward Viscount and the water, and the other one is looking west on Monroe. Those were taken last week, and the arrays are there, but you just can't see them because of the topography. Nevertheless, my client has agreed from the beginning to create a substantial landscape buffer around the entire perimeter of the arrays. And so that's why we submitted these 3 applications. With me is not only my clients, Mike Liccamelli, but also Bill Kenny, who is a landscape architect, and Bill is also the author of the CAM application, which we submitted. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Bill for a few moments so he can describe the proposed landscaping as well as compliance with the Coastal Area Management Act.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates in Fairfield. I am a registered landscape architect and an ecologist. I was hired to help with both the CAM review as well as preparing a planting plan to help screen the solar arrays that have been installed. So if we start briefly with the CAM, we've studied the property. It's really 400 feet from any of the critical coastal resources that you would be concerned with, tidal wetlands or beach or waters and things like that. So there's a little bit of the southern portion of the property. There's a portion of the property that is within the 100-year flood zone, but the solar arrays themselves are not within that zone. So none of the proposed work is within an actual coastal resource area, critical coastal resource area. So then with regard to this proposed screening, we prepared this drawing, and you have Viscount Drive to the northeast and Monroe Street to the northwest, and the solar arrays in this triangular shape, pyramidal shape here. So what we did was we proposed a very substantial evergreen tree planting, a continuous planting along the Viscount Drive and then wrapping around and coming down Monroe Street. We're going to stagger the planting to help break it up, but the trees are substantial. They're 12 to 14 feet in size. They'll be spruce trees, and we'll provide a very vibrant and substantial screen at that location. On the southern end, we are planting some flowering shrubs, some native shrubs that will just help to break up the view for the residents of the community here. And so we're using native plants that also will provide habitat for wildlife. Lastly, there is also a 4-foot chain link fence behind the planting, so that'll be screened by the planting, but it also has slats in it to provide another layer of buffering. So be pleased to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Attorney Nuff, do you want to add anything at this point?
No, I think we can get to comments in favor, and I think you'll learn a little bit more about what the Housing Authority was thinking when they entered into this agreement and the benefits that they derive.
All right, Mr. Sulkus, do you have comments? I see the report, the administrative summary.
Yeah, it's nothing really to comment beyond that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
This time, are there questions from the board? Mr. Grant.
One question in regards to just the height of the plantings. Has that been taken into account so it doesn't cause shadows over the solar panels?
And I want you to build the plantings around the perimeter are 12 to 14 feet, and the ones below are...
Well, they say they grow up to 14 feet, so that's what I was kind of wondering.
So the array is facing to the south this way, so the primary solar exposure is in this direction. So we'll be on the northern side and not having a significant effect on how the rays. What are these? Those are shrubs. So those will be maintained at a height of about 4 to 5 feet tall.
Are there other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, this is a public hearing, and at this time I would invite anyone that is in favor of this to please approach the podium, state your name and address, and if you would keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Christopher Cody. I'm appearing tonight as a representative of the Milford Redevelopment and Housing Partnership, which was formerly known as Milford Housing Authority. I've submitted a letter from the executive director, who's the secretary of the corporation, on behalf of MRHP and its board of directors in support of the application for the vegetative buffer. The letter goes into some of the details behind the utility of the solar array for the purposes of energy efficiency and cost reduction in operating the housing authority's public housing developments. There are substantial, well, energy efficiency contracting involves using the savings that are gained from the energy efficiency measures to fund the actual improvements. So as I say, things like low flow toilets, programmable thermostats, solar energy, in some cases geothermal. We haven't done any of that here in Milford. Are funded by the cost savings. The program that HUD has in place now allows you to, well, the way to describe it is you get a utility allowance from HUD as an operating subsidy for public housing. When you do these energy efficiency measures and it decreases your costs, HUD will continue to reimburse you for your old usage. And therefore the savings plus the reimbursement from HUD allows you to then fund, in this case, roughly $3 million worth of energy efficiency improvements to all of the housing authority's properties. Solar was done at the DeMayo Drive complex and here at Viscount Drive, and they entered into a power purchase agreement which allows MSL to install the solar array at no cost to the housing authority, and the housing authority repurchases the power over 20 years, creating these substantial savings. So that's just the background technology behind the proposal. Because the equipment on the roof of the Viscount Drive building impacted the space available, and you have to be so many feet back from the parapet, They couldn't install the solar arrays on the roof of the building at Viscount as they did at DeMayo Drive. So given the fact that we have a 6-acre plus site, the solar array was done as a ground base in this particular instance, and we wanted to buffer it, and that's the nature of the requirement. So the solar array itself is an accessory use to the residential property, but the amendment has to do with adding the landscape buffer. Thank you. Any questions?
No, that's good, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? All right, seeing none, at this time I would invite anyone who is opposed to this to please come forward, state your name and address, and again, if you would keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, Attorney Nuff. Oh, sorry. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Board. My name is Michael Liebelt, and I'm a resident of 94 Monroe Street. I just have a couple of questions, if it would please the Board. I'm sure the permitting process was all completed within the laws of the town of Milford. However, I think that the Board would owe it to the residents of Milford to take a look into what kind of laws we have in place that would allow a solar array of this nature to be installed at an at-grade capacity as it has been here in a residential area, and also an area that is frequented by many residents of Milford and visitors of Milford. From my standpoint, where I live on the hill above Viscount Drive, I look down on these solar panels every day, and as do people approaching Walnut Beach and leaving Walnut Beach on a daily basis. I think it's kind of an eyesore. I also think that there are some safety concerns here, having a lot of energized electrical equipment in an accessible area. A vegetative buffer doesn't exactly secure that area 100%. I know when I see solar arrays installed in other areas, they're surrounded by fencing to prevent people from entering and accessing that area, protecting the area from people who live around it, and also protecting the equipment and the assets in the area. So safety concerns, protecting the asset of the Milford Housing Authority, and also the area along Monroe Street, as they mentioned, is very high above the solar panels. It's a very steep slope, and I would also have concerns about vehicles potentially going down that hill in an accident or something of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, Attorney Nuff, if you would like to respond to any of the comments made?
Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman. In terms of their appearance, I mean, frankly, that's why we're here tonight, to provide a very substantial buffer up to 14 feet around the perimeter to shield any views of the arrays. In terms of the danger, as Bill indicated, it will be fenced inside all the landscaping, so you won't see the fencing, but it will provide security. But it's not. But even if you had access to it, you could touch the panels, and there's no danger of doing so. So we understand the concerns about the visual impact and about potential dangers, but frankly, there is no danger associated with these arrays, and we're doing our best to completely screen the arrays from the views of the neighbors and those passersby. Thanks.
Thank you. As part of the public hearing process, anyone that has spoken has an opportunity to respond to Mr. Attorney Nuff's comments.
Members, just for the record, I would note that the concern about the guardrail on Monroe Street is not one that the Housing Authority can address. It has raised the issue with the city, and it would be the Public Works Department who might put up a barrier or a guardrail along Monroe Street. And we were, have made that request, and of course, subject to budget constraints, I think the city would love to cooperate with us if they could.
Thank you. Again, anyone who has spoken has an opportunity to respond to Attorney Nuff's comments. All right, seeing none. Attorney Nuff, you have one last shot at this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any further questions from the board? I would move that we close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion from the board.
Yes, I would make a motion to approve as submitted.
Is there a second? Mr. Sutton? Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, next item is liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports tonight? Seeing none, Regulation Subcommittee.
Nothing at this time.
Approval of minutes for, what are we doing, the July 18th, 2017.
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? Mr. Quish, all in favor of approval of the minutes? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Chair's report, alls I have to report is that Mr. Lutz has tendered his resignation as of today. So he will no longer be part of this, and he will be missed. I think he brought a unique voice to the board, so he will be missed, and reasons are personal. So that's my report. Staff report?
None this evening.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's it. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.